So all the moms out there, the dads too, gaming can pay off.
But what you're not seeing and what BIM does, it allows us to take that 2D plane and extrude it back in 3D. And I'm not saying it's cutting into the profession, it just allows us to move at a more rapid pace.
Well, hi, Brian. How are you?
Good, Myrna. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to be introducing Brian Corcodilos and DesignBlendz to our audience of Business Leader podcast. I'm so excited about everything you're doing, being on the cutting edge of something, and you've had the most amazing journey to get there. And it's really a modern story, so I can't wait to dive in. You're in the Philly area, right?
Yep, Greater Philadelphia region here. Our office is in a little spot called Manayunk, which is in the northwest section of Philadelphia.
Very good. I'm in Austin, Texas, where it doesn't snow, except 1 or 2 days where it freaks out the whole city for, minutes.
Yep.
And then people say, oh, that's over. We can go back to living our Texas life. So good for you that you're up there in Philly.
Yep.
I know from what you've told me that you grew up in a family of restaurateurs. They own diners and restaurants, and you knew pretty early Top Chef was not going to be on your future plan.
Yeah, my grandfather owned a diner. My uncles owned delis. My dad owned a deli. Catering. My relatives owned another diner. So I'm a Greek mutt, so I come from Greek heritage. I watched my grandfather work, 7 days a week in his diner, just and relatives doing the same thing. I said, look, I love the restaurant industry. It's what shaped half of me, right, and shaped full of me, right. I love food, but I said, look, I don't think the traditional route of being in a restaurant, even though I did every job in a restaurant, was for me. I want to go design them. And that was my trajectory off towards architecture school.
Yeah, no, that's so great to say restaurants are fine as long as I design them. I'm not really into
and I didn't want to work 7 days a week.
Go visit them for the food and then come home.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. No, that's exciting. Well, so another thing that brought you into your unique compilation of skills was you were a pro gamer back before there were pro gamers. I mean, 2004, 2007, a Counter-Strike pro gamer.
Like my mother thought I'd end up in jail. So, I was playing video games, well into the wee hours of the morning back in
She wasn't wondering where
grade.
you were at 2 a.m. You and the Mountain Dew were up there with the gaming station.
Yeah, I remember my mother unplugging the internet. I'd sneak back down and plug it back in. And, for the industry she was in back then, just a little side note, I had a T1 connection back in 2004. And she, my mother did some unique stuff in her business and why she needed that connection with some of the stuff she was working on. But I was living in the burbs in Jersey with a T1 line connection.
Fastest person sniping people, a T1 connection. That is a teenage boy's dream.
Yep. And that's when it was cool, right? You didn't have connections like that. Now that's the standard. T1's slow compared to the standard, but yeah, I played video games back a long time ago before it was a cool thing to do.
Super nice. Well, so you come into college, you're thinking of architecture, but you also are so familiar with that 3D gaming environment and what's possible there. And you came up with this unique blend. What if you could design buildings using that 3D architecture that's virtual? Yep. And then you went out and did it in DesignBlendz.
Yeah, back when I entered college back in 2008, it was the 3D realm and the virtual world was just becoming a reality where, everyone, 2D line work or AutoCAD, what most people are familiar with was the standard, and everyone's familiar with that. But this technology BIM at the time, which stands for Building Information Modeling, was this new technology that was around, but it didn't have mass adoption. It was just starting to become a thing, and a lot of architecture firms weren't switching to it, or they just didn't want to train their staff, or staff wasn't buying into the new standard of how buildings were going to be put together. And in college we were learning it all, and I started early on doing consulting work for other architecture firms implementing this technology, and coinciding that with the virtual world. Obviously, you're modeling things in 3D, so you can create what is known as 3D renderings today and 3D models and show things what stuff could look like ahead of time.
So all the moms out there, the dads too, gaming can pay off.
Yeah.
Those hours and hours in the 3D world, there's actually a net benefit potentially.
There's what's interesting. I literally talked to a parent literally last week, oh, my son, thinking he plays Minecraft. Is this a path? I'm like, absolutely. The virtual world, there's the physical world and there's the virtual world, and someone needs to create both.
So interesting. Well, and when you look at numbers, games, their revenue is bigger than movies globally.
Oh, yeah.
So everyone is soaked into virtual worlds that are involved in those kind of gaming environments, which I think will help with the transition. We'll talk about this at the end of the podcast as we sort of meld the 3D world and the 2D world. Mm-hmm. But in 2024, just last year, you were on the Inc. 5000 as a rapidly growing company. And then 4 years running, the Inc. 100 in Philly, the fastest 100 growing companies 4 years running. So this gamer's still putting up numbers, but in his design firm.
We're trying.
So nationwide, projects ongoing, multifamily, commercial, industrial, hospitality, municipal. You've had clients like PGA Golf, which I know, Greystar, which I know, multifamily housing, but then something called GoPuff. Like, you have to tell me.
We love GoPuff.
The world is GoPuff.
Yeah, GoPuff is they're a global company, and they specialize in getting things to your door in 10 minutes or less. So whether it's a stick of deodorant or frozen food or toilet paper, paper towels, beer, doesn't matter. It shows up at your door in 10 minutes or less. And we help them with their facilities in a bunch of different states.
Well, yeah, companies that are growing fast, I'd have to think that 3D design mechanism that you've already talked about how it drastically reduces change orders. Mm-hmm. Which is the burr in the saddle for everyone that does any kind of building, design, remodeling, it's those change orders. Mm-hmm. So cutting that out, wow, it saves time and money. Do you want to talk about, do you still have to deliver the paper 2D renderings to building, managers inside municipalities for permits?
Yeah, so to touch on the elimination of change orders, right? Do I think there's something that no change orders will ever be there? Maybe someday. There's always stuff. Mm-hmm. But if you think about how you're drawing, right, the traditional architect, you have your piece of paper, and back to the days where they're tracing lines, drawing with T-squares, right? You're drawing that one view of the building, right? Today, drawing sets still need to be delivered on paper or electronic PDFs, right? And they're still in that 2D plane. But what you're not seeing, and what BIM does, it allows us to take that 2D plane and extrude it back in 3D. So if you were to turn that building on its plane, you could see every 3D component associated with that building, down to the windows, the door handles, right? And what we're able to then do is we can rapidly quantify the building into certain things. How much square feet of flooring or drywall or brick? What's your window schedule? And then what also happens as decisions and changes get made, if I update that window in one spot of the building, it'll update the rest of the drawing set in elevation and sections to inform that one change. Where in traditional architecture practice, back in the AutoCAD days, you would have to go update the elevation, the section, the floor plan, the door schedule, the window schedule, whatever it was, in all these different changes. Where BIM, you make one change and it informs the whole 3D environment.
Like autofill on your Excel spreadsheet or something. Yeah.
Essentially, when you drag the column down.
Yeah, just add the whole column for me.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I heard about a very interesting project you're doing in Colorado, and it's a ski in, ski out condominium. You have a new little girl, and I'm wondering how long before she's in a tiny snowsuit and she's got her stroller strapped to a surf.
The snowsuit's already been purchased. We got that. My wife got that at her baby shower, our baby shower. So that's already on. We have that in a drawer. Actually, I might be hanging in her closet.
Very good.
Yeah, definitely. What's interesting about the virtual world when we're creating 3D imagery for clients, we can do that anywhere. And we do it here from Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And what we do better than anybody is our accuracy and quality of image. So, obviously, if you go to get a 3D rendering, right, people, will do it in other countries. Companies here will outsource it. We don't do that. And that's what's allowed us to do it at the highest levels, where you're not worried that you find the wrong vegetation or a bamboo tree in the back of your image, or a car with a European license plate versus a US license plate, right? So there's nuances, and clients hire us because they need it to look as real as possible. Mm-hmm. And that quality and that accuracy matters when you're selling $4 million condos in Telluride, because if you portray something that's not there and you're selling the house ahead of time, now you have liability. Right. Well, oh, you showed me this curtain that was looked like it was recessed into the ceiling. Well, why is it not like that? Well, yeah, it looks better in the image to do it that way, but if that's not actuality, now you set yourself up for risk when you're selling these condos. So yeah, we're working with a developer out there to just essentially help them pre-sell condos before they start construction. And that's exactly what we did. Over 80% of the condos were already pre-sold prior to them sticking a shovel in the ground. And look, we create that virtual world, we build out the whole community, and then we're creating assets on top of that, such as renderings, animations, 360 points. We're showing upgrade options, right? So a kitchen, and then change out what the cabinets would look like. We also do something pretty unique, is where the technology we're using to create these images is movie quality software. So we're also taking in drone photography and animation, or drone flyovers, and implementing that into the actual virtual environment as well to make it look even more real. So when you're taking a look from the kitchen looking out into the mountain, we're literally taking that exact height of that drone up on the 4th floor of the condos with that view and laying it into the exact location. So
when they look out that kitchen window, when they move in, they see what they saw. Wow.
Yeah.
The competitive environment that we have, these kinds of tools, AI tools, other things, you sort of need them just to keep pace, especially if you're going to buy a $4 million vacation condo. In order to be competing at that level, the people who would buy that are in movies and they see 3D. They see, spaceships land and buildings blow up, and they're in a gaming environment maybe. And so it's kind of like when fast food was competing, we'll give you hot food in 5 minutes for $5. Everybody else, now that's the new standard. I've been here 5 minutes. Where's my $5 worth of hot food? Come on now. The place next door will do that for me. As these standards get higher and higher, you need this kind of capability to compete.
And look, it's when you compile the technologies with other phases of the architectural profession, right? So, my company, we have 3 uniques when we're working with customers, right? The first is customer service. We have technology and things around making sure that we stay up to date with our clients. And it's rare that someone goes 24 hours without a response from us. So we invest in customer satisfaction, customer experience, first and foremost. Second, as you already know, 3D approach. We do everything in 3D. Like it's how my team starts and how we finish projects. Whether we're like talking to general contractors out in the field, we're using the 3D environment to inform our decisions back to that person. And then the third unique for us is innovation. And like you touched on, AI technologies, right? We're able to start now doing things in other phases of the architecture, such as the schematic design, more rapidly to get to decisions quicker. And I'm not saying it's cutting into the profession. It just allows us to move at a more rapid pace. To your point, I want it now, and where is it, right? Like that's what the consumer demands. They see that in most of the rest of their lives.
Yes.
Why wouldn't they expect it on the architectural front? And that's what's happening.
Wait a minute, I can have a stick of deodorant in 10 minutes on my porch. Why is this taking so long?
Correct.
Everything is so fast and everything is so at your fingertips that I really love that your firm is inventing ways to stay abreast of all of that. And I think of, builders that I've known who are looking at, building out their neighborhood or building out their apartment building or building out their factory and saying, what if I could see where every bolt is, before the first bolt gets ordered? The efficiency, the cost effectiveness, and also the comfort of knowing I already know what it looks like. I walked through it with 3D glasses on, or I walked through it in the demonstration from DesignBlendz.
Yeah, and it blows my mind. And when I started getting into this profession, I go, building anything, right? Any structure is like one of the most expensive things we're going to do in life. $1 million home, a municipal building, right? Like it blew my mind that people did not, am I allowed to curse on here? Didn't give one shit about what it would look like or what the experience was. They just trusted that a 2D set of drawings was enough. And that's not, it blows my mind that that's even a reality. And honestly, I think that's, we can get into a whole issue about the infrastructure in America, things like that. But if you had 3D informing that whole process this whole time, we would have a much different society we live in. And the spaces would be healthier and mentally would help people just exist better. And there's no reason we shouldn't start now. And, if your firm's not using BIM technologies, you're losing somewhere. You might not pay for it up front, but I can assure you, you're going to pay for it later during construction.
Well, and with change orders, and if you compete to win business, you need to put your best foot forward. And, AI, some of these tools, they save time, they save money, they improve quality.
Yeah.
So it's like, how are we not winning using that?
Every year I give a presentation to the staff about our yearly goals, our 5-year, 10-year, like where we're heading as an organization. And after that, I keep updating monthly, but I told my staff this year heading into our goals this year, I said, look, one of the things we have to do is heavily focus on innovation this year, given what's happening in the market. I said, look, AI is not coming for your job. AI is not going to replace you. I said, somebody utilizing AI is going to take your job. And I looked at everyone else. I said, guys, the only person that's coming to take your job is someone utilizing AI.
It's sort of like, there's a new chainsaw in town. There's a faster car. There's a bullet train. I mean, these things continue to move forward, and we can't just decide we're going to stay with the horse and buggy. My horse is my friend. I'm not, it's like, actually, no, civilization's going to leave you behind.
Yep.
And so, I think it's really important, but also from someone who is a former pro gamer, it seems like you have fun doing it.
I have a lot of fun. I don't get to be in the trenches as much as I used to. I don't get to do the fancy renderings and visualization. My job's grown to connecting dots and making relationships with, what's happening 3 years from today. And trying to see and predict when certain things are going to come to reality. When Apple released their headset, right? And, they put it out and, I must have got 10 text messages that day from people who were like, how'd you know that type of technology was coming? I said, it's not that it's a reality. It's just how the forces are aligning that, we're moving into an iRobot realm. We're moving into a Ready Player One environment. Like, things are happening and progressing and technology's moving. But I also said, what was interesting at that time where people were like, what do you think of the device? And I said, it's going to be a flop. And they're like, it's Apple. It's not going to be a flop. I said, the device is going to be a flop. It's not ready for mass adoption, and it's not totally set up for what the world truly needs today. It's a pretty picture at the moment. And I was right. It's a flop. They took it off shelves. It is not selling as well as it could be. It's because Meta 3 Quest is crushing them still. And it's because the mass adoption, and they were pretty much giving those headsets away for free and tying it into social media and everything else. Apple didn't do anything that was already not being done. And that's why it was a flop.
Well, I think that technology is coming, but we're always surprised. Is it VHS? Is it Betamax? Are we going to do McDonald's or Burger King? I think having that competition sort of refines all the gains that people are making. And your customer tells you, I want to buy that, I return that. Your customer will tell you. But it's exciting in these big projects that you bring this kind of edge. I think about municipal dollars being spent with a bridge retrofit or building out the new high schools. You talked about in New Jersey, they're like leaning into 3D in terms of school design.
Yeah, so like one of the, it's not too recent, but about a decade ago, New Jersey Department of Education made a change to where they need all of their architectural drawings in a BIM environment. One of my first early jobs was working for an architecture firm in Jersey, taking their 2D CAD drawings, converting it to a 3D BIM environment, and taking all the other consultants' drawings that were in 2D and putting it into environment. And you had some young, recently graduated college kids informing architects of decades saying that, hey, by the way, you should take a look at this area of the building. The steel and this duct are running into each other. Like, isn't that wild that somebody that didn't really know how buildings went together that early on in his career was able to help inform an elementary school? So you can imagine, you give this technology to a well-developed architect and what's possible. It's truly changing the way we put buildings together.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. Well, I always like to close these podcasts with looking at the future, and you're keeping your hand in the trenches in a podcast. You have a podcast, the New How podcast, looking at what other entrepreneurs are doing, because your entrepreneur journey has been so interesting, so rewarding for you and your family and your team. So who do you feature on the New How podcast? What's that about?
Look, when I look back at people, one thing they asked me, like, Brian, what are you passionate about? I was like, I like building things. So secretly, this podcast allows me to just bring on other people.
You're in the right place.
Yeah, to like see how they built stuff. Because, maybe I don't have to go start an in-home healthcare company. I'll just bring on the biggest one in the greater Philadelphia region. He'll tell everyone how he built it and what he did, right? So, I think that's something as entrepreneurs, we like solving problems and mostly building things to solve problems. And it allows me to share other people's journeys of just what I think is cool stuff that and that stuff that others can relate to. I don't want to be a Joe Rogan by any means, where I'm bringing on the biggest people in the world, but obviously I want to bring on someone that quit their job to go for it and found success, right? Because I did something similar. So,
well, I love that you give back that way. And, I realize you're bringing two different worlds together, but in terms of looking to the future, you feel like that future is sort of happening now with that synthesis of the virtual world and the 2D world. So share with us your view of that, because you're living it. I'm not living it yet. Of course, I'm talking to you from a computer screen, so I'm kind of living it.
We're in a virtual environment on some server in the cloud somewhere talking. That's what we're doing. But yeah, I can, whether people realize it or not, we're moving towards a time where the physical world we live in and the virtual world are going to become one. And they already are, right? Most people have this device in front of them and it's in their eyes, more than 12 hours a day. And the things they see on it are informing who they vote for. It's informing what they believe in. It's informing what they think's reality versus, perceptions of reality or various forms of it, right? So that technology being more in depth, right? We're dealing with it on a phone. Eventually, this is going to be all around us in our ether, right? You're going to look up at the sky and you're going to see Coca-Cola. And it's not because there's satellites up there that project Coca-Cola. You're not going to need that. You're just going to see it through your contact. Right, or whatever device that is. And eventually it's going to get to the point where you're not just going to hire an architect to develop your architecture anymore, right? You're going to have to find a team that understands the virtual world and how it interacts with the physical world and vice versa. And look, that's what I'm positioning DesignBlendz to do, right? We're set up in a way that's utilizing the virtual world to help people with what it's doing now to help pre-sell, make decisions, do things the right way and market, right? But eventually that technology isn't going to be as separate as it is today. It's going to be one. You're going to be sitting in a bar and you're going to look over at the whiskey shelf and you're going to see the whiskey and then you're going to focus in on Knob Creek. It's going to pop up. It's going to tell you where it was distilled. It's going to show you an animation of how it was distilled. It might even show you the exact time it was distilled, and that video will be captured to that bottle and linked, right? It's going to go so in depth that I don't think people can comprehend. I'm not trying to invent the technology that does it. I'm just trying to be the Angry Birds app of that technology. That's what I'm trying to do at Design.
There you go. Well, we'll all be in Minority Report in the future. We'll walk past the boards and go, hey, you, that dress you wanted, it's over at the shop over here. So yeah, so interesting. Well, I'm so pleased to meet you, to learn about this great leading edge opportunity you have for people that are in design and architecture and gaming and virtual worlds, and that you're giving back to with the New How podcast. So, well, I want to see a picture in the future of the little one on a snowboard. How old do they have to be? I mean, can you strap her into a chair with
I think 2 years old is kind of the start. It's like as early as you're going to go.
Well, I'm sure Colorado's calling. So, yeah, it's exciting for you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate
about this future. Yep. And congratulations on all your success and your continued success. It was great to talk to you, Brian.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. See you all next time.